Deku's past enemies join the battle and are fighting for the heroes. We pick up right where we left off, with Brava typing away at the speed of light to hack into Skeptic's system. It may be too late to undo the damage he has caused, but she can always make sure he's caught for the crimes he's committed. This chapter, called The Story of How We All Became Heroes Part 4, seems to point to a chance for villains to become something more than their previous selves. And if that could include people like Stain and Overhaul, I'm all for it. We start off in the investigation headquarters with people besides Brava and Tsukauchi there struggling to stop Yue's crashing before it is too late. Unfortunately, the evacuation system isn't working, nor is communication going through, so there doesn't seem to be much progress. Regardless, they make sure to send backup to Gunga to keep the situation under control. Meanwhile, Brava is simply reminded of her times in the past as a shut-in, aka a hikikomori. Back then, she had a lot of time on her hands and used it to test out her hacking skills, which proved good enough to slip into Feel Good Inc. servers. Feel Good Inc. of course being a song by the Gorillaz. Not only that, but she replaced their ads with Ganriki Nekos, a branding that involves a cartoon kitty with big eyes that's kind of like Puss in Boots. It's pretty obvious that even back then, Brava's skills were top-notch, and she's clearly proud of having done that. On the other hand, Skeptic is hysterical, realizing that the person who has already ruined his plans is the same person who made his life hell back then, and cost him a lot of money apparently. Interestingly, the flashback shows that the kitties themselves didn't bother Skeptic, but rather that their eyes look like holes and form too repetitive of a pattern, which triggered his trypophobia. Good to know. At least Brava sounds somewhat guilty about what she did as a shut-in, but not enough to stop her current task. And in fact, she sends him these same bug-eyed kitties, but full-bodied now, and makes them dance, as if to taunt him even more. All Skeptic can do is scream into the void, frustrated and losing his marbles as he watches the dancing felines bust a move to Da Pump music. And Da Pump is a Japanese boy band that was formed in 1996 and is still active today. Eventually, Skeptic realizes he can't win against Brava's army of cats when all his screens are taken over. So instead, he tries to flee with whatever he can, while preventing her from accessing the UA evacuation system. He's so pleased with this idea that he shamelessly reveals his plan to escape with a manic smile. "The flames of revolution will burn forever," he says, as if trying to jinx himself. We jump back to the investigation headquarters and a man calling for Tsukauchi as they watch UA falling at a higher speed now. He points out that it won't be long until it crashes at this rate. Another man calls Brava asking for her to do something. She hasn't given up and is trying her best to write a new program to repair the damage that Skeptic did. The only problem is, even with her speed, UA will have crash landed by then. With a cold stare, Tsukauchi begins to reveal his true feelings. That they never should have trusted a villain to help them with something so important. It was a mistake on their part. A crime is a crime. The past won't go away, he says, but it doesn't seem like he fully believes it. We get a quick glimpse of Oyama back in chapter 338 and how he wanted to do the right thing after working alongside an evil like All For One. And most importantly, if you consider yourself the hero, the person or group against you are the villains. This is why Tsukauchi says that he is one, despite not being an actual lawbreaker himself. And that is a perfect lead-in for the battle between Deku and Shigaraki, who both see themselves as fighting for a just cause and the other as an obstacle in the way of their success. With Deku still feeling the effects of gear shift and how powerful it is, he's still struggling to catch his breath. But he doesn't have a lot of time to do so, with Shigaraki looking ready and raring to go now that Monoma is out of the picture, at least temporarily. Despite Deku being on the side of heroes and Shigaraki on the side of villains, the shot of their eyes certainly doesn't make that obvious. If we didn't know any better, we might have even thought the opposite was true, just going by their expressions. But that doesn't matter as we get back to Mandalay rushing as many people away from the worst danger and encouraging them to brace for impact, seeing as it is likely inevitable that they will have to fight now. The Twice army isn't done yet. Kaminari doesn't realize it right away but notices that if the clones are overrunning everything, it must mean that Monoma and Aizawa were taken down. And they obviously were. The Twice doubles look more like a landslide now than an army, but the havoc they promise to create is no less terrifying. At the same time, the Lake Star and Stripe's pilot buddies look on, wondering if they should get involved somehow. But there's too many risks to that, such as accidentally hitting someone they don't mean to if their equipment is hacked into as well. And just then, with hope dwindling, there is a sign of something good. A well-dressed man that we haven't seen in a very long time flinched through the air towards the crashing catastrophe. Skeptic can't believe what he's seeing, but it has nothing to do with that situation. It's because his escape attempt has been thwarted with his location having been broadcasted to the heroes. And the ones who ended up being nearby, well, it's none other than Miss Joke, Hound Dog, and Shindo Yo. And considering the group that they have brought together, it is probably fair to assume that Nakagame, Makabe, and Toteki are there too. As Hound Dog removes his mask, he comments on how funny it is that a man he previously put away is now there to save everyone in a desperate moment. He even calls it karma, which would imply that maybe they shouldn't have arrested Gentle to begin with. Likewise, Tsukauchi calls out the Gentle criminal by his last name, Tobita, saying that they are counting on him. Of course, Brava's eyes fill with love and she has no doubt that he will do well. Looking much more regal and focused on being heroic, Gentle agrees that he will come out on top because he has to repay my debt to him. That's when we get a flashback of how this group came together. Around a month and a half ago, Gentle was being held in Mikuzu prison alongside many other villains. Considering it wasn't as top security as Tartarus, and even that was broken into, it makes sense that it would be easy to let the criminals out. But to make matters worse, it was Muscular himself who had done it, one of the strongest and most brutal villains we have seen in the series. So with ease, he destroyed the guard tower and forced them to flee. All the while, he spoke to the villains, letting them know that it was their time to be free and do as they liked. The escapees couldn't believe what happened or how easy it was for them to be let out. But instead of enjoying their newfound freedom, they immediately started to plan to get revenge on those who had arrested them in the first place. Seeing this dark turn of events, one man stood up to them at the time, Gentle Criminal. Though no one really knew who he was then or even now, and he feared for his life, he kept his feet planted in front of him. The anxiety and worry made Gentle shake, but he still told them, "Are you all really okay with that?" And Gory's words must come to mind for him because that's what he sees in that terrifying instance. As long as someone wants to change, they still can. And if they're too impatient and want instant results, then of course their lives will stay the same. Gentle realized that back then he made many mistakes, but didn't have the courage to stop the path he was on. This was his chance to go a different way and encourage the prisoners to do the same. But all they wanted was to get away and commit more crimes. So with all the bravery he could muster, he stood up to them and stopped them all from leaving. With the thought of Brava back by his side, Gentle did exactly what he set out. Everyone kept within the prison. Of the 7 jailbreaks at the time, Mizuku Prison was the only one that was kept intact, all thanks to Gentle Criminal. Or should we say, Gentle Hero. Though entirely exhausted, he was successful and the escapees all lay behind him, thrown around the area. Gory, who believed in him being able to change in the past, was there to speak with him afterwards. He asked him what he wanted in exchange for his incredible work keeping them in the prison. With blood dripping from his face and a serious look, he didn't hesitate to answer, "I want to see La Brava." And considering where we are now, that wasn't such a hard request to grant. With a loving shot between the two, we're told that Gentle and La Brava's time apart made their love stronger. And if you recall, La Brava's love for someone, especially someone like Gentle, makes them more powerful. She's the ultimate support character, so long as she's deeply attached to the person involved. She tells Gentle that she was a fool, because all she needs is his happiness to find her own. Now that we know where they stand, we get to see the result of their amazing bond as Gentle uses Super Gentle Lover to catch Yue as it keeps dropping. While he struggles to hold out the entire landmass, Gentle can't help but wonder if Deku is still fighting to protect other people's smiles like he once said. In his own youth, he had tried to save a man from falling and failed. So now it's his time for redemption on a much larger scale. Mandalay is shocked to realize they've stopped falling and that the air turned into some kind of trampoline. Way to go, Gentle. Despite Deku being in a rough situation himself, he immediately hears Mandalay's description and knows right away who the cause is, having faced Gentle himself. With tears in his eyes, proud of what the reformed criminal has accomplished now, Gentle smiles and says how he really wanted to save that man. But there's no time for a reunion since Mr. Black Whip himself, Daigoro Banjo, tries to get Deku's attention back on the fight. He shouts, "Boy, this is bad," as he notices that Shigaraki's movements are freer. And he will soon be able to touch the ground and spread decay everywhere if he does. No one would be safe then, not even Deku. Even though they stop Yue from crashing, there is still this mess to take care of. As Shigaraki's hand gets closer and closer to the ground, a shot flies at him, disconnecting his right hand from his arm cleanly. It even knocks Shigaraki's whole body back with the impact. As we see the weapon itself, the familiar spike, Tsukauchi continues his thought from before. He decides to quote a friend of his, who I assume is All Might, by saying, "No matter what lines they've crossed, they're still human." Considering that All Might said that while leaving and also carrying a mysterious case with him, could this be about trying to save Shigaraki? Ever since he found out that Tomura was Shimura Nana's grandson, he's been beating himself up over it. It could be a way for him to rid himself of the guilt and feel like he's done something of worth. And of course, we all know that the death of All Might has been teased forever. With the series set to end soon, this may be the beginning of the end for him. And if Eri is charged up enough power with her horn, we could even see the return of Prime All Might to stop the recently rewound All for One. As we get back to the gun that fired the winning shot against Shigaraki, it's revealed that the shooter in question is none other than Lady Nagant. The text next to her says, "They had that thing we call an origin." This can mean one of two things. Either that villains became that way due to things that happened in their past, leading them down a dark path, or that people who have become villains can become someone better if given time and a chance to change. But back to Nagant. She may be covered in bandages, even all down to her legs, but her skills certainly work just as well as they did in the past. And it's interesting to see wrappings connecting her arm to her weapon, as if the explosion caused problems for her nerves or muscles, and she needs that to keep herself steady. Regardless, she came for a purpose, and she did it with ease. And it's nice to see her having such an epic moment. Nagant's been missing for a long time, ever since Deku convinced her to change her ways. It's just like the effect he had on Gentle, right? The only difference is that she did escape the prison and was nearly killed for turning her back on All for One, where a gentle criminal never really reached such a deadly point. Now that Nagant is back, could that mean that Overhaul isn't far behind? And when will he apologize to Eri? Let us know. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.